Hello there. Right now, the UK needs a well-communicated political plan and an iron fist in an iron glove to deliver it. But what did we actually get? Now, if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe and then like and comment below. Oh, and Richard is back from his sickbed. He's published a new video and there's a link to it in the descriptions box below. Now, before I get into the main part of the video, in the wake of the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage, a Royal Navy frigate has been sent to the North Sea to help the Norwegians monitor activity around gas pipeline infrastructure. And, saying that he needs it right now, the Defence Secretary Ben Wallace has decided to purchase a warship fitted with undersea drones that can monitor for underwater activity around pipelines and internet cables. This is despite the UK already having 2 such units in the production pipeline. The trouble is that the Russians have been engaged in all sorts of suspicious activity in the vicinity of our pipes and cables for years. Those internet cables, power cables and gas pipes are worth billions to us and power our economy, which is in the trillions. Now, the UK is part of a joint command unit based in Dam Neck, Virginia. And the UK has Royal Navy and Royal Air Force experts embedded there. This is the Naval Ocean Processing Facility for the Integrated Undersea Surveillance System, covering the Atlantic Ocean, North Atlantic and Norwegian Sea. And it boasts the largest contingent of UK personnel in the US, providing timely and accurate acoustic cueing to operating and supporting forces, and to conduct continuous maritime surveillance for homeland security 24/7, 365. That means round-the-clock, state-of-the-art sonar monitoring. And that will of course be tied in with satellite imagery and military unit contact data. But this is presumably insufficient given the current threat, hence the new purchase. Let's hope Ben Wallace is also looking at other aspects of our defences that need a bit of a beef up right now, and we shouldn't really need to wait for the worst before we think about giving ourselves the means to defend ourselves, should we? Now, as I said, right now the UK needs a well-defined route out of the financial mess we're in. And it will take an iron will across cabinet to get there, an iron fist in an iron glove, so to speak. But with Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, all we've seen so far is a blancmange fist in a glove made of meringue, all backed up with mere words and hot air. We were told that Liz Truss was in Margaret Thatcher mode and not for turning. Well, that's true, she's not made for turning, more like made for continually revolving. And the worst of it is that people will look at her attempt to cut the top rate of tax for high earners by 5% and say, if you can do that for them, you can do that for me. The detailed numbers might say different. That policy might actually have brought more tax money in. But in general, people don't care about that sort of nitty-gritty. They see it as the rich helping the rich. So I'm wondering how long the removal of the banker's bonus cap will last. And now we're hearing about freezes on benefits and bringing forward the year that the state pension age changes kick in so as to save taxpayer money. The state pension age is currently due to increase to age 67 from 2028 and age 68 from 2044, but there is talk that the later one could be brought forward to as early as 2037. But having been kicked into backtracking on the 45% tax rate, Truss will be relentlessly kicked by her own MPs, who are desperate to be re-elected above all else, to backtrack on anything that might conceivably cost them votes, even if sorting out the nation's finances is the real and most urgent priority. And both Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng are refusing to rule just about anything in or rule anything out. They are now entering the realm of permanent indecision. The indecision of waiting for approval from everyone, approval they will never get, even from her own members of cabinet. And indecision will always lose you the battle, every single time. The truth is that many people were always going to suffer as we accelerate towards net zero, borrow huge amounts of money to pay millions of people to get used to being paid for not working, pushing mounting NHS backlogs into the future, and helping to fund Ukrainian efforts to fend off an aggressor. And all the while fighting Ramona forces entrenched within our establishment, doing all they can to derail the country to try and force the UK back into the single market, as well as the WEF-inspired woke trying to destroy the country for their own Marxist ends. Anyway, after just 3 short years of strife, the nation's finances are in a mess. And yes, it would be the same under Labour, and probably a lot worse. And right now we need a steely resolve to drag us out of the mire. That requires a government with steely resolve. But our political classes are woefully lacking in the backbone department these days, and have been for years. And they are mostly just mere intellectual pillows, bearing the impression of the last campaign group to shout hurty words at them, or bearing the impression of the last mega-wealthy corporate type to whisper in their ear. And all we end up with is a state system that just keeps on increasing in size and expense as it grows ever larger, as it tries ever more to please everyone and to do everything for everyone, including doing their thinking for them. But the people get so used to getting everything from this thing called the government that they either think it's all for free or they expect someone else to pay for it. And worse, they are told continually that it is their right to go bleating to the government and get a handout for anything that gets in the way of their having the perfect life. So the government, in its frenzy to be all things to all people, borrows yet more billions to make it so, and ends up pleasing no one, ever. Now in the past that was expected from Labour governments, but now the Tories have joined in, enabled by lots of fancy financial manoeuvres and instruments like quantitative easing that do little more than kick an ever heavier can of debt down the road. So despite the words of Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng about addressing the national debt and deficit, I see little change from the current Tory government given the crop of MPs they have right behind them, political knives in hand. Give my constituents more free stuff or my letter of no confidence goes in, is the threat. In the end, Liz Truss will be forced to get the Tories back into the rut of higher tax, higher spending, higher borrowing and higher giveaways. Truss and Kwarteng might have wanted to fly the flag of true conservatism, but their establishment-minded mates are having none of it. For them, the votes lie in making sure that the borrowing mounts and the money still flows, whatever the adverse effect on our economy. They fear the thought of weaning the nation off of nearly £3 trillion worth of debt, a debt too big to handle. And the funny thing is that when government tries to be all things to all people and tries to do everything for them and shield them from all pain, then they will definitely cock it all up every time and at every stage, and then it really is their fault for trying it on in the first place. and the fault of the electorate for voting for people who claim they can do such a thing. The first question we should really be asking is, what are the true functions of government? To do a minimum, like health, education and defence, as well as energy and food security, or tend towards the more Marxist controlling of our lives on a minute-by-minute basis, ensuring we never do anything risky? And the second question should be, how do we pay for it? Massive taxes and borrowing, or something like the Bradbury pound, for example. But at the moment, UK society is demanding that government takes the max borrow, max spend route, a route favoured for us by the likes of the World Economic Forum, and the Tories seem completely comfortable in walking that road, the exact same road that Labour would take us down. But when you ask a government to do such a thing, to take ever more control of your life, it costs more and more money. The larger the safety net, the bigger the cost has to be. And the more government is asked to do, the larger that safety net gets, until, in the end, taxes have to tend towards 100%. That is to say, we all end up working for the state, putting in all we can, but only taking out what we are allowed to take out, as decided by our betters in government, based on the minimum that they decide we need to survive. While we're also doing the mandated exercises and the correct education and training, and receiving, on pain of removal of the privilege of pay and food, the required medical interventions. And when you consider how close some developed countries around the world, including the UK, how close they came to enforced medical interventions, shows how close we really are to this position where the state dictates everything for you, even your thinking. And the Tories are firmly on that path, as are the Labour Party, the Lib Dems and the likes of the SNP. Now there is talk that Liz Truss has 10 days to save herself from being ousted by disgruntled Tory MPs. So either Liz will fall into line to save herself, or the Tories, in a fit of self-harm, will choose a new leader to keep them on that liberty-destroying but vote-saving path. And all the while, Keir Starmer and his Labour Party are in the wings, waiting to step forward and continue us ever faster down that dark path. Right now, the globalists must be smiling, because they've got both politicians and the people far too scared to dare set 1 foot off of the self-destructive path that they have been directed onto.